I mean, at that point, I remember I would have rather worked as a barrister in Starbucks, than go back to the office.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Rudy, thank you for joining us today. We're super excited to have you on the show. Before we learn about your business and what it is you're currently doing, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and a little bit about who you are that makes you the entrepreneur you are today?
Yeah, well, thanks for that question, because it is relevant. The upbringing is certainly relevant, because contrary to the way most people have grown up in one place or a few places, I've grown up in multiple places, and not only that, but my parents are of different nationalities and cultures, which makes me what they call a third culture kid, which grows up in a country or an environment that is not their passport. And in my case, it's two passports already from birth. So,
right.
But my dad worked for the United Nations, so I grew up in Argentina, Trinidad and Tobago, Afghanistan, believe it or not, Peru. I ended up going to college in the UK. And when I graduated, I started working for a Fortune 500 company, Siemens. It's a global company, it's the German GE, if you wish. And with them, I started working and traveling as well. So that kind of gypsy blood, or they're called digital nomads today. That didn't exist back then. But yeah, so I continue that trajectory. I spent 15 years with Siemens, but it started in in Germany, in Munich, and then I was in the Philippines and back in Germany, then China, then Uruguay, and that's actually the company that brought me here to the U.S. Back in '99. And I worked for them for 5 years, and then I switched to Ericsson, which was the competition, and I got lured over to them. Attractive package, but I was kind of getting tired of corporate already. I was kind of itchy, and after Ericsson, it was almost 20 years of corporate life. I decided to go alone, which was high risk at the time. My kids were all about to graduate from high school, so I had 3 colleges coming up. And I just plunged. I mean, at that point, I remember I would have rather worked as a barrister in Starbucks, than go back to the office.
Right.
So that's when I started my own business, and a lot of, obviously, like you heard, a lot of international background. So what I started to do was basically continue that kind of business development, sales work across continents. Using my languages, my cultural understanding, cultural awareness, etc. And amazingly enough, it went very well, very quickly, which I did not expect. Actually, an ex-boss was my first client. He was now in a different company, and he needed me, and then one after the other started falling suit, and it was just starting, me and myself and I, and doing everything, from getting customers to doing your invoices to doing absolutely everything. But then we started growing. Fortunately, I started building a network, impromptu network, if you wish, of partners in those countries. So the business development would have a follow-up locally. So I had a partner in Spain, I had one in Italy, I had one in Mexico, I had one in Argentina. And I was doing everything here in the US with another guy who I hired. And then I had a marketing lady, and then it started growing. I think at the peak we're about 15 people. And I guess as far as milestones are concerned, the biggest milestone for me was, okay, when are you going to invoice the first million? And I said, if I achieve that in 3 years' time, I think that was a successful venture. Good news was it happened after a year and a half. So
Nice.
So that's kind of what I did. Laying out your own shingle, as they say, and being an entrepreneur, which I was a kind of entrepreneur within Siemens in a way, because we changed countries and new offices every 2 or 3 years, so there was a lot of change. It wasn't 15 years in the same spot, which a lot of people call that's 1 year experience, not 15, because it's 15 times one. It's always the same. So no, so there was a lot of change then, and then basically it continued. I guess change is something that was bred into me as a kid, and I can't stop changing. And even today, it continues. Even later in life. So yeah, it's been a very interesting ride.
There's a lot to crack open there. I'm assuming, as a young person, all of this constant moving around was stressful. Looking into it from outside looking in, I'm like, wow, how lucky it is to have a person that had access to all this different culture, right? I grew up in a small town, very, backwards, podunk, you could say, right? It took me a long time to learn anything about culture at all, and I'm still learning about different cultures every single day. So how, beneficial it is to have that. But did you see it as a benefit as a young person, or did you kind of think, oh man, I got to move again and that kind of deal?
Well, I have two sisters, and it's funny because we all, we have three different personalities. I'm the most extrovert of the three. The one who was an introvert, she struggled with that a lot. She had almost a trauma of saying goodbye. Every 3 years she had to say goodbye to her friends. I looked at it the complete opposite way. Was I'm gonna have new friends, more friends. I'm not gonna lose the last ones. I'm just gonna get new ones. So I was always, I'm very, optimistic, I guess, as well. Always looking at the glass half full, not empty, and I always saw that as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow, an opportunity for a new experience. Give it to me, kind of thing. So that was my attitude, and yes, it does, help you a lot in life. I believe, at least in the career I had. But there's also downsides to that. A lot of people don't value that or don't understand that, or most people try to box you in, to say, like, where are you from, really? Are you German? Are you Uruguayan? Are you American? You're like, what the hell are you? And you go, whoa, why? Why is that? Answer? Yeah, why is that a problem? I mean, I don't see it as a problem. Why do you see that as a problem? Because people like to box you in. If you tell them you're a German, they can picture a German. If you tell them you're Italian, they can picture an Italian. They struggle to picture me. So that can be negative. That can be, that can be taken negative. You have to challenge yourself to say, well, that is not a bad thing after all. People's relationships with flags. People's relationship with flags. People that feel like, these are my roots, like I'm rootless or have many roots, whichever way you want to put it. But yeah, it can be taken negative, and there is some negative parts to it. But as I said, I always look at the positives.
How insightful for a young man to look at the positive in that change. I know it's a time of turmoil, and it is challenging to pick up and move and leave everybody behind, or it feels that way at least. So, but as a business owner, you have to adapt to change on a regular basis and look for those opportunities and just move forward, not necessarily dwell on, I look at those as sunk costs, right? That's yesterday's cost. I'm looking at today and tomorrow, constantly moving forward. So I think it's really cool that you were able, as a young person, to see the benefits of that kind of constant drastic change. And it's obviously helped you in your adulthood, in your career.
I mean, definitely. I mean, to me, that was second nature. I knew that I was getting change every 3 years while I was in Siemens, because I was in this, executive fast track kind of program. But so you knew change was coming, and after 2 years, you start getting I start getting bored. I do have a bit of ADHD as well. Okay, so so change is something you want, and if you look at the last generation, our parents' generations, they were used to being lifers. 25 years in the same company. That has changed in my generation. And if you look at the younger generation now, the Gen Zs, I mean, they're hardly 2 years in a company, So they're embracing change, a lot faster, a lot easier than our generation did,
Absolutely. All right. And so now you formed a company. You're an agency that assists companies in expansion abroad. And either that's from the States to other countries or from other countries moving and having branches in the States.
Correct.
What is the name of the
And
company today?
Arrakasta, which is a Basque name. It's the word means success.
Okay.
So
and we'll throw the link up at the bottom.
Yes. Okay, beautiful. So yeah, so basically, after I did that consulting way back when, I think that was in 2006, I went back to corporate for a couple of stints. One was recently in Spain. I was in Spain the last 4 years. I was running Europe, Middle East, and Africa for them. It's a cloud-based software company out of the U.S. and managed their business, for that period. And now I'm back to consulting. The link down below. And again, as far as geography is concerned, it could be European companies, Israeli companies, even some Asian companies. Less of them, but mostly European, Israeli, and American companies that want to settle into the U.S. or American companies that want to go to Europe. And we also did quite a lot of business in Latin America. Latin America is kind of volatile. There's times where you do not want to invest. There's times where you do. I'm expecting Latin American economy to grow tremendously looking forward. The whole food crisis, they produce a lot of food, so their economies are going to grow. It is a lot more stable than it was in the past, with the exception, I guess, of Venezuela and maybe Argentina as well. And people looking, looking to diversify their income. We're expecting a recession in the U.S., so American companies are starting to look abroad again. Shall I invest in Europe? Shall I invest in Asia? Shall I invest in Latin America?
Right.
And it's very uncertain times right now, so it's better to, put your eggs in more than one basket.
Argentina's doing some pretty cool stuff right now, like with blockchain technology and crypto mining. Argentina's doing some really innovative, out of the box kind of stuff, and I'm excited to see what happens with them long term. What are
they're doing? There's a lot of software development capabilities coming from Argentina, Uruguay as well. I would tell you that at least in Uruguay, at least half of the software engineers are producing software for other countries than Uruguay. I mean, it's for US, etc. They have tax-free zones where it's very simple, easy, and cheap to install an office, and then you can hire all these folks there. At a fraction of a cost that you pay here in the U.S. And I'm talking about that's been like that for the last 3-4 years. And if you look at the, market today, you could probably hire 3 to 4 people for the one person you're hiring here in the U.S. And even if you if you find them in the U.S., if you find them, they're kind of scarce today. Software developers,
and you can keep them, right? Because it's such a I think the programmers that we had in the States 5-10 years ago are now project managers managing teams of programmers from other countries is the trend that I'm seeing happen today. Because we got to just keep up with the software. It changes so fast, and it's exploited very quickly if you don't maintain it 100%. And keep it moving forward. So awesome.
100%.
I've got a little bit of knowledge in this. I'm just a St. Louis guy, right? I don't travel abroad very much, but I do a lot of work with guys from Russia and the Middle East, and my knowledge is managing the phone systems for the calls to the U.S., and I backhaul that over to the call centers either in the Middle East or we do a lot of programming out of Russia. What are some of the hurdles if a company's gonna go abroad and start providing services to other countries? What are just a handful of the issues besides the obvious, the phone numbers, right? If I'm servicing companies in the U.S., I got to have U.S. phone numbers. If that's the simple one. What are some of the other hurdles that they might run into if they want to go abroad?
Well, there's quite a few. Tax is one. Taxes, healthcare, those are your big ones. If you want to go there yourself. I mean, it depends what you want to do. I mean, do you want to ship people over there as an expat? I would tell you that today, the whole expat thing is dead. It's very expensive. You don't want to pay, a U.S. salary in Brazil, for example. Why would you? There's enough talent there that you do not have to send people over, with home leaves and sick leave and, Christmas trips every year, international schools. I mean, that to me is dead, from the start. So you do want to partner with a local company. That would be always my advice.
Okay.
Whether you're a hardware company, a software company, a services company, software as a service, anything. I mean, today, with COVID, everybody's, got up to speed with video conferencing like we're doing right now,
Correct.
If you think of the old days, the old Cisco networks, et cetera, to do video conferences, you had to go to a video conferencing room. Today people are driving their car and doing video conferences, so
Yes.
that is everywhere. So, so then you have partners, you want a partner that obviously speaks your language. You may want to have them in your time zone, depending on what it is you do. Is it something that requires like a 24/7 service or not, or do you do normal work times? That will, will play a big role as to, where you want to go. But, apart from that, your agreements, I think that's where a lot of people get pulled over the table. What kind of agreement will you sign? Is he an agent? Does he represent you? If you're talking equipment, will that person have, for example, spare parts? Will they buy inventory? So is he a reseller or is he representing you? I mean, so you start getting into the details of how that is done, then how are you going to get paid? How are you going to get taxed? Are you going to tax locally? Are you going to be taxed here? Right. You do not want double taxation. Most countries have agreements in place so that does not occur. But I would say those are, will you be able to get your money back, in dollars, for example? I mean, you cannot go to Venezuela and do business today for that same reason. You will never see a dollar wired to the US. So,
right.
In Argentina, if that is happening today, they rather pay you with bottles of Malbec than with US dollars, so, those are the things to be seen, those agreements, the local agreements, also have to be careful with agents, the legality of that, are people winning contracts, with business etiquette or not,
Right.
So you don't want to get into any messy stuff there. So, there's many reasons why it's better to have a local do it. They know how to do it, and, you're sitting back home, from every legal standpoint, you're protected here. So,
right.
Just make sure you're just doing
this.
Yes.
At the where you want to go and
correct.
Utilize some of their resources
Exactly.
to help you out. Because they're going to understand the HR nuance. They're going to understand some of the legal nuance. They might not understand the taxation between the two countries. If you've ever dealt with international tax, I hate international tax. It takes me forever. I have to pay somebody else to figure that out for me because I get so lost so quickly. And it ends up I'm chasing 52 cents for a month to figure out how to try to get that balanced. And it lost somewhere in the conversion rates, right? So it's just really, really challenging.
Yeah.
Today, where everybody is getting used to the working remote and working video conferencing. Do you see more companies going international, or do you think that it's reserved for the big guys?
No, quite the contrary. I mean, what you're seeing, or what I've been seeing, the last few years, last 20 years, is a trend to go the opposite way. I mean, the big guys like Siemens, Newbridge, Alcatel, Lucent, Nokia. I grew up in telecom, so those are the names I'm throwing out there.
Right.
They had their own offices in all these countries. And in the past, one could argue, well, they didn't know the technology, or they didn't know this, or they didn't know that. Those days are long gone. All these countries today produce equipment comparable to ours. Brazil produces fighter jets, commercial airplanes. They didn't 50 years ago, but they do now. Software development, there's nothing they cannot do, and I don't care if you go to Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, or wherever, they're pretty capable of doing pretty much everything. So all those companies have actually started closing shop, and, they work with a local partner, a system integrator that can represent them, those companies, depending on how big or small they are, it depends how much they're going to invest. For example, are they going to hire people exclusively to work your product line, or are they going to, be selling your product line next to the others? That's where these contracts come in play. How I'm incenting these guys to sell my stuff over somebody else's. That my product is the first one he presents, he pitches. So you want to incent the local sales guy with something, so he's always talking about you and not everything else they're representing. For example, is that an exclusive agreement with one representative, or do you want a couple? Do you want them to compete in the local market? So those are kind of the nuances. But no, the big companies have all pretty much pulled back and have let a local company, a capable company, of representing them. Those were probably companies that used to do the service part of any kind of project. Maybe you were selling, let's say, wind turbines. You're not going to send people to do the installation and commissioning and transport of that. You hire those guys locally. Well, just give them some more technical training, and tomorrow they can represent you. That's kind of where it's been headed.
Okay. On the international business side, I've got a handful of friends that have recently moved, and then recently I said in the last 3 to 5 years, recently moved to Colombia to start software development companies or service companies, right? And the entrepreneur ends up moving there so you can build and manage teams there. Colombia, and I've got another group of friends that have done this and have moved to the Philippines and done that. Is that a growing trend for entrepreneurs, or do you see that as just an anomaly?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's an anomaly. I'm sure it happens, but I think if I go to the Colombian market and see how many of those companies are run by a foreigner, they'll be in the minority for sure.
Okay. Interesting. I know that in Colombia, at least, the people that I've been talking to, as long as you're taking one class a year, you get to maintain your visa, and you get to operate a business there. And I'm assuming you can do that indefinitely, right? As long as you continue to feed their educational system with your cash, then they'll continue to give you the visa to stay and operate your business with not citizenship, but with your visa there.
Sure. Exactly. I mean,
right?
Every country is different, but I would say that every country welcomes that. I mean, if you want to become a resident, that's a different story. In countries like Portugal or Spain, you need to spend, $500,000 buying a property, for example, and then you're given residence and visa, and you don't even have to work there or anything. You can just retire there, for example. But as a local with all those benefits, tax benefits, etc. That is one. But if you don't want to spend your $500,000, these are more people that have said, I want to move, I want to retire elsewhere, or Americans that go to Costa Rica, for example. There's a lot of them, to retire there. But if you want to do business, yes, you can. I would say every country, with a few exceptions, maybe, will have a way of you to allow you to come over, and develop business there. You'll be taxed like everybody else, not any differently, because they do want to encourage, investment. People that are coming over with education, with money, and to develop business. I mean, everybody will throw the doors wide open. You got to do some paperwork for sure, but no, very, very welcome.
Definitely seems easier to leave the States and do work somewhere else than it is to come to the States to do work.
Would you? Do you think so?
At least my perception.
I mean, I've seen so many
more
people
leaving than coming.
Now,
Right.
You can blame that probably on politics. But
Probably, yes.
yeah.
So the
But
people that I do business with that aren't in the U.S. don't live here, right? I'm dealing with them remotely, but I definitely see people leaving the U.S. to other countries to start companies today.
Yeah. Well, I've seen, when I came here in '99, I used to have a lot of other, foreign people that I knew that came from Venezuela, Peru, elsewhere, and they all came with K-1 visas, and the K-1 visa is a work visa, and it was full of those folks, and a lot of people from India, China, Asian countries, are all here with K-1 visas. I mean, there's not enough people, particularly in software. Okay. In the software industry, I mean, go to California, and half of the employees are on K-1 visas. So
yes, it's a challenge. We definitely need more people in this country working. I think we just need more people in general, right? We don't have enough to fill the jobs that we have today, so it's a real shame. Out of the whole world, and you're not every nook and cranny of the planet. Where do you see emerging markets, like huge opportunities that could be executed on, over the next 3 to 5 years?
That's a very hard question to respond. I mean, if you look at the development of Asia, over the past 15 years, it's been astounding. I mean, it's funny because you look at Europe and, they talk about, 4% growth, 3% growth, and they're happy with that, yeah, it's definitely Asia. I would say Middle East is huge right now. If you look at Saudi Arabia, for example, they're investing tons of money, in other stuff that is not oil or gas related, because they know that's going to run out one day. So, they're building cities, they're doing all sorts of things, trying to diversify their revenue. That's happening pretty much in all the Arab countries. I know Africa, the growth rates are also very high. In telecommunications and technology, there's a lot of investment there. And Latin America, I was just saying, I think Latin America is going to grow tremendously economically. And, if they do things right and invest in the right things, yes, they will be investing in hospitals and education and roadworks, et cetera. So, so those I would say are the highest growth areas right now.
Yeah, I think, it's hard to consider this as an American, as we're literally driving on the highway, scrolling on Facebook and TikTok, right? That half the planet still doesn't have dedicated internet access for the people, right? And in South America, Africa, a lot of those countries are going to get it, and they're going to see the same .com bubble that we got to see in 2000s, right? At least I would assume, like, as these people are coming on the internet, there's going to be more and more opportunity and more innovation coming through.
You'd be surprised. That actually, I would like to counter that, because you'd be surprised at the development, and it's happened differently. Okay. The U.S. had massive PC penetration in internet, through your dial-up in the old days and your modems and your DSL and what have you. And, now they're laying fiber everywhere. But, in those days, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, what you just said is 100% true, but what has happened is their investment went straight to mobile. So nobody has, I mean, if you look at PC penetration in the US, I think it's 60% of PC penetration, maybe higher these days. In Latin America, it was 15 at the time, so factor 4. But if you looked at the wireless network, they were on GSM networks way before the Americans were. They were having CDMA and GSMA discussions and stuff like that. And they all developed 3G much sooner than the US. It was also a lot cheaper to deploy mobile than it was to deploy fixed line or fiber. You don't have to bury anything in the ground, just put towers out there. And they were very, very advanced. I'll give you an example. because they were then, not only were they doing mobile, they were doing mobile apps. They started doing, even before, the App Store appeared with Apple, they were doing stuff, using feature phones as
Right.
modems. A really good example of that was in Kenya, Safaricom, a telecom provider there, feature phones, no smartphones.
Right.
And they were doing mobile payments, all right, with their phones back then. I'm talking 20 years ago.
Right.
We in the U.S. mobile payments is probably now kind of on vogue. You can do your Venmo, you can do your this, your that, your
Right.
Zelle. Kenya has been doing it for 20 years, and why? It was the only trusted account they had. People did not have bank accounts, for example. They didn't have PCs in the home. They didn't have bank accounts, but their trusted mobile provider, that's where they would spend their money. So. So if you look at, you say, how can I learn something from Kenya, Safaricom? Yeah, mobile payments. Why don't we have it here? Why can't you pay parking with your phone? That's another thing. In Europe, you could pay your parking or your subway or buy a Coke with your mobile phone for 20 years now. So
Right.
I would say, the technology is certainly there. They're using apps that are more efficient than the ones we're using. A simple example is, SMS. People are still texting with SMS here in the U.S. Everybody is using WhatsApp in the rest of the world. Why? Because SMS, you got to pay for it over there. You don't pay it here, but you pay it in the rest of the world. Over there, it's WhatsApp is free. It's part of your data plan. So, I would argue again that they're far more advanced in certain areas than we are here in that respect.
In some areas, yes, but there's still half of the planet that's going to come onto the internet.
Yes,
over the net,
100%.
and I'm assuming that's going to happen. I don't know when the internet's going to have full adoption, but I would assume over the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, this is going to be, 25% won't have access still, right? And I think this is going to go pretty quickly as we have devices like Raspberry Pis and mobile devices that are dropping in price and becoming. You could probably just take all the last generation American phones and just ship them over there, and and then give people that internet access. It's wild to me that people don't have it still.
Yeah, one massive step here is there's a couple of projects that are taking place right now. One is through Elon Musk, his Starlink program, it's called, and it's basically a satellite system, a low-flying satellite network, which will allow ubiquitous internet coverage globally. That is, and there's a couple of competing systems. I think Jeff Bezos and Amazon is on another one, but there's two or three of these.
One too, right?
There's two or three of these. They're actually using it. I don't know if you knew, but the beta deployment was actually in Ukraine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because of the war, and communication and, towers being blown, etc. And Elon Musk, I think, hates Russians or something like that. But he said, you guys can use this for free as a communication tool in your war. And they were the beta customers of this project. Still you cannot buy those modems, etc. But yeah, so that will provide ubiquitous coverage, Saharan Africa, for example.
Yes.
Exactly right.
And
anywhere in the world, you'll be able
Elon
to
Musk
tune
for
in.
doing that, right? Because
yes, sir.
There's some fear there, right? Of when he pulls this off, and I believe he will. Does he have too much power? That's a whole different conversation to have, right? I think Facebook and Amazon and all those guys have too much power right now, and I'm waiting for the day that some smart kid goes after them and takes lion's shares of their profits today. But it will happen.
I don't know. From what I read, and you never know if these things are true or not. Elon Musk is trying to democratize that. That's what he wanted to do with Twitter. He wanted to let the bird out of the cage. So,
absolutely.
So you got to trust him
and
until
as long as he's
otherwise.
the steward of all of that change, then we're good. But give in the wrong hands, it's a very dangerous tool to have that much power over the globe. But at least in the States, we'll have other options, and I hope that there's enough conspiracy theorists out there that they won't adopt just one platform for the long term. So pretty wild stuff. The future is abundant with opportunities for all of us.
Correct.
Rudy, again, what's the name of the company?
Arrakasta.
I'm not
Pronouncing
gonna try to say
gringo.
it.
Arrakasta. Oh.
All right, and we'll throw the links at the bottom. If somebody's looking to go and start working abroad from their current country and doing business in multiple countries, what kind of, is it anybody in that boat, or do you have a certain kind of criteria of the company that you're trying to work with more specifically?
I would say that they've all been technology companies that I've worked with. I mean, it's been automotive, biotech, fintech, telecom, IT. I have not worked with retail. So it usually is, technology, infrastructure kind of stuff, from traffic lights to, public lighting to, IoT, the whole IoT thing.
Right.
So yeah, very technology based, not retail. Yeah.
All righty. And we've got the
Or
links at the
sports
bottom.
goods and stuff like that. Yeah.
We'll put all the contact information on the bottom of the screen and the details here. So if you wanted to reach out, talk with Rudy about some kind of project that you might have, reach out. There's a ton of nuance on the legal side and business side, and then even on the personal side on how to even communicate with people from different cultures, right? And knowing that before you walk in the door.
And that is a huge thing. I mean,
people.
What you just said is actually a huge thing. It's not just speaking the language. Everybody speaks the language, but do you understand how they think? What is he? This is what he said, but what did he mean to say? You can feel the temperature if this is a friendly conversation or not. Is he a good guy? There's a lot of people out there, and you want to pick. You want to work with people that have your own, your similar DNA. You want to understand yourself well with them, that you have the same goals and principles and values, and that is very hard to pick up if you're not a local or you don't know the country or what have you, guided there, because to me, language is it's like reading, there's nothing, you're just reading. You understand what they're saying, but there's a lot of depth there, and there's competition, there's going to be markets, where it's not attractive to go. There's others that they are, like who's your competition in the US, and are they present in that country? Yes or no? It's like I was representing a company once that did, high quality service modems, So when you're looking for a partner, what are you looking for? We used to call those places ABCs, anything but Cisco, because if they represent Cisco, you're not going to win, so who wants to go and beat Cisco? That's your partner, so, those kind of nuances are really important to, fish out before you do any kind of agreement with anybody,
Absolutely. And the nuance is very, very important with different cultures. And I can't stress that enough. So don't go on this trip alone. It's a wild ride to navigate. And you have people like Rudy out here that can help you navigate these waters of international business. So
we'll be glad to do so.
Rudy.
Yes. No. It's a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation, and we'll be glad to help anybody in their journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Rudy. You have a great day.
All right. You too, man.
That's it for today's show, folks. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. All you have to do to join that text line is send me any question about business or technology. I'll do all the research, and I'll give you an absolutely free, totally unbiased answer. Get to work.